urban design and transition, and of course universities as well. This is the image of 1,000 years ago. The two largest universities, Al-Azhar and Bologna, right? 1,000 years ago. Now we look at the big transition today. You can see the major shift. Again, the notion is the one thing that hasn't changed so much is universities, right? They've stayed very stable for 1,000 years. Indeed, the way I got involved in USM doing foresight work, we had an EU meeting in Luxembourg where they asked us to look at the future of the universities. 3 of us presented in Luxembourg, and most of the European vice chancellors said, this is nonsense. Why do we need scenarios? Why do we need visionings? We know how to do this for 1,000 years. And I still remember countries saying, that's interesting. They think it's nonsense, but perhaps it's an opportunity for Malaysia to leap ahead. Now you may say, but what about technology? Hasn't technology changed the nature of learning? You can see the one on the left, you fall asleep from books. The one on the right, you fall asleep on your PC. That image is courtesy of Professor Williams, who may have fallen asleep on her PC, but we're not sure. So one is the images of the future are changing, and perhaps less so at universities. But if you want a different future for your university, whether it's sustainable, you have to challenge assumptions. If you look at this analysis here, remember Henry Ford 100 years ago or so. The whole notion of workers were dirty, workers were poor, we wanted to keep distance from them. Ford had a very simple idea, let's pay them high wages, so they become consumers of his product. The conventional wisdom of the time was, you can't do this. This is a crazy spiritual idea. Why would you pay workers more? By challenging that assumption, he started to create the American auto industry. Now, of course, what worked in 1910, etc., didn't work in the 1990s. Their assumptions were big cars, cheap oil. Those assumptions changed, but they were unable to adjust, and just $1 trillion of losses they had, and only saved by the U.S. government. So assumption challenging doesn't happen in one day, it keeps on going. So to challenge assumptions, you have to have the critical eye. You have to say, what's missing, what's not being said. If you can read that, the lady goes to genetics and says, look lady, you're the one who asked for a famous movie star with dark hair, strong nose, and deep set eyes. Clearly, her assumptions were not met, and she was unable to challenge them. Now, what was the main assumption? Does anyone want to yell it out? What's the main assumption she had? Just yell it out. Too shy still? Well, one, that it'd be human, right? Second, that it would not be imaginary. But the crucial assumption was that of linguistic transparency. She assumed language was transparent. What I say, you understand within my categories. In fact, we know more and more language is opaque. Each culture has embedded ways of knowing. And just language is not a neutral arbiter of information. Language is implicit when we speak. All texts are interpreted. So university is about sustainability. We have to ask ourselves, what ways of knowing are we transmitting as we talk about the future?